I never imagined I'd be sitting at a high-stakes business dinner in downtown Chicago, pretending to be the clueless wife while secretly understanding every treacherous word my husband whispered in Korean to his potential investor, words that would shatter my world and force me to rebuild it from the ashes. My name is Lauren Harper, and at 38 years old, living in a sleek high-rise condo in the Loop with views of Lake Michigan, I thought I had the perfect life, or at least the Instagram version of it. My husband, Alex Harper, was a hotshot executive at a major fintech company, climbing the ladder fast with his charm, his Harvard MBA, and his self-proclaimed fluency in Korean from years of deals in Seoul. We had no kids yet, by his choice. He always said, "Not until I'm CFO, babe. We need the stability first." So our life was all brunches at trendy spots, weekend getaways to Napa, and me playing the supportive partner at company events. I worked as a content strategist for a mid-sized marketing agency, pulling in decent money, but Alex always downplayed it, calling it my fun side gig, even though it paid for half our vacations. Looking back, the cracks were there long before that fateful dinner, but I ignored them because admitting something was wrong meant upending everything I'd invested 10 years into. It started subtly after Alex's big promotion 4 years ago. He became more distant, more critical, snapping at me for small things like leaving dishes in the sink or questioning his late nights. "Lauren, I carry the weight here. The least you can do is keep things smooth at home," he'd say, and I'd apologize, feeling guilty for adding to his stress. Our intimacy faded, sex became rare, mechanical, and conversations turned into monologues about his day while I nodded along. I felt lonely in a marriage, like a ghost in my own home, but I pushed it down, telling myself this was just what happened when one partner was ambitious. Friends envied us. Alex was attentive in public, always with an arm around me, posting couple photos with captions like, "Lucky to have my rock." But privately, I was starving for connection, for someone to see me as more than an accessory. That's when, about 2.5 years ago, I rediscovered Korean. I'd minored in it in college at Northwestern, drawn to the culture through K-dramas and a semester abroad in Seoul where I'd fallen in love with the language's nuance, the way honorifics revealed social dynamics, the beauty of Hangul script. But after graduation, real life hit. Jobs, meeting Alex at a networking event, marriage at 28, and I let it fade. One sleepless night, alone again while Alex crashed at the office after a client dinner, I downloaded a language app out of nostalgia, just to refresh a few phrases. But it hooked me immediately. The satisfaction of nailing a difficult pronunciation, unlocking new levels, it was like therapy. I'd study in the mornings before work, earbuds in during commutes on the L train, then binge K-dramas without subtitles, join online forums, hire tutors on platforms like Italki. I didn't tell Alex because the one time I mentioned wanting to join a book club, he rolled his eyes. "Lauren, with what time? You're always complaining about being tired from your projects. Stick to what you're good at." It wasn't overt cruelty, but it was dismissive, eroding my confidence bit by bit, making me shrink my world to avoid conflict. Korean became my rebellion, my private empowerment. I practiced daily, sometimes 4 hours, reading news sites like Naver, listening to podcasts on business Korean since that's what Alex dealt with. Within 18 months, I was fluent, able to follow rapid conversations, understand idioms, even dream in Korean occasionally. It rebuilt my self-esteem. For the first time in years, I felt capable, intelligent, alive, beyond being Mrs. Harper. Then came the invitation that changed everything. Alex burst into our condo one evening in early spring, tie loosened, eyes gleaming. "Babe, this is it, the deal that puts me over the top. Korean investment firm, huge capital infusion. Their lead partner, Mr. Kim, is coming to Chicago next week. Dinner at Alinea. You're coming." I looked up from my laptop where I was secretly reviewing Korean vocabulary. "Me? To a business dinner?" He nodded, pouring a scotch. "Absolutely. Koreans value family. Kim asked about my personal life in our last call. Having a stable, beautiful wife seals the image of reliability. Wear that red dress, the elegant one, not too flashy. Smile, be charming, but let me lead. Kim's English is okay, but we'll switch to Korean for the real talk. You'll zone out, but it's fine. It's only for optics." My stomach flipped. Korean? He had no clue I spoke it. He'd picked it up through work emergence, always boasting about being one of the few American execs who could negotiate directly. Sounds important, I said calmly, heart racing. Of course I'll be there. Inside, a storm brewed. This was an opportunity, or a trap. Part of me dreaded what I might hear, but the growing unease in our marriage demanded truth. Was I paranoid, or was there something rotten beneath the surface? The days leading up were agony. Suspense built as I prepared mentally, reviewing financial and business terms in Korean, practicing neutral expressions in the mirror. Guilt gnawed at me. This felt like betrayal, spying on my husband. But the emotional neglect had left scars. I needed to know how he really saw me when masks were off. I confided in no one, not even my best friend Mia, who I'd distanced from because Alex called her dramatic. Thursday night arrived, crisp Chicago wind whipping off the lake as we cabbed to Alinea, the Michelin-starred temple of molecular gastronomy. I wore the red dress as ordered, hair pinned up, minimal makeup, poised, presentable. Alex squeezed my hand. Remember, just be you, the perfect wife. No need to chime in, focus on looking supportive. At the table, Mr. Kim rose to greet us, a polished man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a firm handshake. Initial chit-chat in English, weather, flights, Chicago's architecture. Kim's English was actually strong, accented but fluent. Then, as the first course, an edible balloon, arrived, they transitioned to Korean. Alex's voice smooth, confident, diving into projections, blockchain integrations, revenue forecasts. I smiled vacantly, nodding at appropriate moments, the ideal decorative spouse. Thrill coursed through me mixed with dread, every word crystal clear. Kim asked about Alex's personal life, how he managed stress. Alex chuckled. In Korean, "My wife is great for that. She's not ambitious like me. Happy with her little job, keeps the home running smoothly. No demands, no complications. Allows me to focus 100% on career." Little job? My role involved managing multi-million-dollar campaigns, but to him it was insignificant. I sipped wine, face serene, but inside fury simmered. Kim murmured approval, but I detected hesitation in his tone. The dinner progressed, courses artistic and intricate, conversation deepening. Alex exaggerated his contributions, claiming sole credit for initiatives his team drove, painting himself as indispensable. Subtle narcissism I'd glimpsed before, but hearing it laid bare was chilling. Then Kim probed work-life balance, mentioning his own family. Alex's laugh turned conspiratorial. Truthfully, the pressure builds up. I have an outlet, a woman at the office, Sophia in operations. We've been together 8 months. Lauren suspects nothing. She's too naive, too trusting. Sophia challenges me, shares my drive. We discuss real plans, not just daily trivialities. My world tilted. An affair. 8 months. Sophia, I'd met her at the holiday party, young, ambitious, always laughing at Alex's jokes. Nausea rose, but I chewed slowly, expression unchanged. Thrill of discovery mixed with devastating pain. Betrayal like a knife twist. How had I missed it? The late nights, the password-protected phone, the sudden gym obsession? Psychological layers paled back. Was this why he delayed kids, kept me at arm's length? But worse was coming. As talk shifted to future visions post-deal, Alex leaned in. This investment catapults me to CFO. I've prepared. Diverted bonuses to private accounts, crypto wallets Lauren knows nothing about. Over $600,000 secured. If marriage becomes a liability, I can exit cleanly. American women can be entitled in divorce. Better to protect what's mine. Hiding assets. Planning abandonment. My hands trembled under the table. I clasped them tight. Kim's discomfort was evident now. Furrowed brow, clipped responses. He glanced at me, eyes narrowing slightly as if sensing my tension. Did he suspect? The man was perceptive. Perhaps my micro-expressions betrayed me. Dinner concluded with polite bows. Kim addressed me directly in English. "Mrs. Harper, pleasure. You seem very thoughtful woman." His gaze held empathy or pity. In the Ober home, Alex euphoric. Kim's hooked. This is life-changing, Lauren, for us. Us. The irony burned. I nodded, voice steady. Congrats, honey. That night, while Alex showered, I replayed the discreet recording from my phone in my clutch. Crystal clear, damning. Emotions crashed. Rage at his deceit, grief for the marriage I'd believed in, terror of the unknown future. Psychologically, it was a whirlwind. The Nile flickering, maybe I misheard, bargaining, could we fix this? But mostly anger at years of gaslighting, making me doubt my worth. I didn't sleep. Dawn brought resolve. I called Mia first. She'd been through a cheating ex. "Lauren, it's 5 a.m." Sobs escaped as I spilled everything. "Oh, honey, come over now." At her apartment in Wicker Park, over coffee, she hugged me as I cried. "He's a narcissist, classic control through diminishment. You need a lawyer, stat." She connected me to her divorce attorney, Victoria Kane, a shark known for high-profile cases. Victoria listens to the recording, eyes sharpening. "This is gold. Asset concealment is fraud in Illinois. Affair proves bad faith. His company likely has morality clauses. We build a case quietly, gather evidence, freeze accounts if needed." Strategy sessions began. For 3 months, I lived in suspenseful duality, loving wife by day, warrior by night. Kissing Alex goodbye, cooking his favorites, while sneaking into his office, photographing statements revealing offshore accounts in Singapore, crypto transfers, emails to Sophia, passionate, planning a future together, referring to me as the obligation I'll shed soon. Heartbreak renewed with each discovery, but determination grew. Therapy helped unpack the psychology. Years of subtle emotional abuse had led to learned helplessness, making me tolerate neglect. Learning Korean independently was my subconscious rebellion, rebuilding autonomy. Victoria advised no confrontation yet, gather more. I updated my resume, networked discreetly. Turns out my skills were in demand. One agency offered a remote senior role, double salary. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Kim reached out via email, forwarded through company channels. "Mrs. Harper, I recall our dinner fondly. Rumors reach me of personal matters. If assistance needed, my firm seeks U.S. talent fluent in Korean for liaison role. Discretion assured." He knew. His discomfort that night, perhaps he'd warned contacts or intuition. We met at a neutral cafe. I spoke Korean fluently from the start. His surprise melted to respect. "You understood all. Your husband spoke carelessly. Strong woman like you deserves better." The job offer: Director of Cross-Cultural Communications, 6 figures, travel to Seoul. I accepted pending outcome. D-Day arrived. Victoria filed, served Alex at work. I stayed at Mia's, heart pounding in suspense. His calls flooded. Confusion, "What's this nonsense?" Rage, "You bitch, how dare you?" Pleading, "Baby, let's talk." I ignored, letting Victoria handle. When I returned with escort to pack essentials, Alex was devastated, disheveled, eyes swollen. "Lauren, please, it's a mistake." I played the recording. Shock registered. "You Korean? How long?" "Long enough to hear the truth. The affair, the money, how you see me, as a liability." He collapsed, begging therapy, promising change, but psychology kicked in. Abusers reform temporarily when losing control. "Too late, Alex. You diminished me for years. Now I see my value." Divorce battled 9 months. He fought dirty initially, claiming recording illegal. It wasn't one-party consent in Illinois, but evidence overwhelmed. Company investigated ethics breach, demotion, payoff to avoid scandal. I secured the condo, half-hidden assets plus sanctions and alimony. Custody, NA, but freedom, immense. Post-divorce therapy delved deep. Betrayal trauma, rebuilding identity. Emotions raw, grief for lost dreams, but liberation soared. I thrived in my new job, leading teams, traveling, dating a colleague who celebrated my intellect. At 45 now, reflecting back, that dinner was catalyst, painful revelation birthing empowerment. If you're feeling unseen, dismissed, cultivate your strength secretly. Learn the language, literal or figurative. Gather allies, evidence. The psychological toll is heavy, but emerging whole, authentic, is priceless. You are not decorative. You are essential. Fight for your life. It's yours. That night after the dinner at Alinea, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in our king-size bed staring at the ceiling while Alex snored beside me, his arm draped possessively over my waist like nothing had changed. But everything had, and the weight of what I'd heard pressed down on me like a physical force, making my chest tight and my thoughts race in endless circles of betrayal and self-doubt. How could he say those things about me? Dismiss my career as a little job, call me naive and trusting as if that was a flaw, plan to leave me penniless while sleeping with Sophia, that ambitious 29-year-old who'd always looked at him with stars in her eyes at company parties. I wanted to shake him awake, scream every ugly truth I'd uncovered, but Victoria's words echoed in my mind from our first meeting the next morning at her sleek downtown office overlooking Millennium Park. Don't tip your hand yet, Lauren. Knowledge is power, and right now you have the element of surprise. So I lay there silent, tears slipping into my pillow, feeling the full psychological gut punch of realizing that the man I'd loved for a decade saw me not as a partner, but as a convenient placeholder, someone to manage the home front while he chased glory in side pieces. By dawn, the grief had hardened into something colder. Resolve. And I slipped out of bed, made coffee as usual, kissed Alex goodbye with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, and watched him leave for the office, oblivious to the storm coming. The next 3 months were a masterclass in compartmentalization, a thrilling yet exhausting double life where every interaction with Alex felt like acting in a play I no longer believed in. I'd come home from my agency job, ask about his day with feigned interest while he rambled about meetings and deals, cook his favorite steak with garlic mashed potatoes, laugh at his jokes, even initiate sex a few times to keep suspicion low, all while my stomach churned with revulsion at his touch, knowing where else those hands had been. Behind the scenes, the suspense built daily as I became a detective in my own marriage, waiting until he left for late client calls to rifle through his home office drawers, photographing bank statements on my phone and uploading them immediately to the encrypted drive Victoria set up, discovering transfers totaling over $800,000 now to accounts in his name only in the Caymans and Singapore, plus a crypto wallet I'd never known about, seeded with Ethereum bought during the last bull run. Each discovery was a fresh wound. How long had he been planning this exit strategy? But also fuel for my growing rage, the psychological shift from victim to avenger happening incrementally as therapy sessions with Dr. Elena Ruiz, a specialist in betrayal trauma that Mia recommended, helped me unpack the years of subtle emotional erosion. This wasn't sudden, Dr. Ruiz explained during our weekly Zoom calls from her Lincoln Park office. Narcissistic partners often engage in slow devaluation, criticism disguised as concern, dismissing your achievements to keep you insecure and dependent. Learning Korean in secret was your subconscious fighting back, reclaiming agency. Those sessions were lifelines, places where I could cry without performance, process the complex emotions, not just anger at Alex, but anger at myself for ignoring red flags, the late nights excused as workaholism, the way he'd mock my friends until I saw them less, the constant reframing of my successes as cute or helpful for pocket money. Suspense peaked one evening when Alex almost caught me. He came home unexpectedly early while I was in his office copying files from his laptop. I'd guessed his password from an old pet name, and I barely had time to close everything and pretend to be dusting shelves, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. "What are you doing in here?" he asked suspiciously, and I forced a casual laugh. "Looking for that tax document you mentioned. Thought I'd organize a bit." And he bought it, distracted by a work email, but that close call lit a fire under me to accelerate. Victoria's team was building an ironclad case, the recording from the dinner, legal in Illinois as one-party consent, financial trails proving dissipation of marital assets,
emails to Sophia I'd accessed by forwarding myself from his unlocked phone during one of his showers, steamy exchanges planning weekends away disguised as conferences, her writing things like, "Can't wait until you're free of her completely," and him responding, "Soon, baby, I'm handling it."
Reading those felt like being stabbed anew. The intimacy they'd built while I'd been gaslit into thinking our distance was my fault for being too needy. But the thrill of gathering ammunition kept me going. I started documenting everything in a private journal too, not just for evidence, but for my own sanity, chronicling the psychological toll, the nightmares where I'd confront him and he'd laugh, the panic attacks in the shower, the moments of euphoric empowerment when a new piece fell into place. Mr. Kim's job offer hung like a golden carrot. We'd had 2 more discreet meetings, one over coffee in River North, where he revealed he'd pulled back slightly from the deal after that dinner, uncomfortable with Alex's character, and another virtual with his Seoul team, where my fluent Korean and marketing expertise impressed them so thoroughly they upped the offer to include relocation assistance if needed. "We value integrity and strength," Kim said meaningfully, and I wondered again how much he'd intuited that night. Had my eyes betrayed pain when Alex spoke? The emotional complexity of potentially working with the man who'd unwittingly exposed my husband's betrayal added layers of irony and gratitude. As filing day approached, anxiety ratcheted up. Victoria warned Alex might react unpredictably, possibly with aggression or manipulation, so we planned meticulously. Serve him at the office during a board meeting for maximum impact, freeze accounts simultaneously through court order, have Mia on standby with her guest room ready. The night before, I barely slept again, packing a go bag with essentials just in case, rehearsing in my mind how I'd stay calm no matter what. Morning came gray and rainy, typical Chicago spring. I dressed for work as usual in a pencil skirt and blouse, kissed Alex goodbye one last time, "Have a great day, love you," and watched him drive off in his BMW, never suspecting this was the end. By 10 a.m., Victoria texted, "Served, accounts frozen, company notified." Then the calls started, his number flashing relentlessly, voicemails I didn't listen to but Victoria did, transcribing the progression from confusion, "Lauren, call me now, what the hell is this?" to fury, "You crazy bitch, you'll regret this," to desperation, "Please, baby, it's not what you think." Each buzz of my phone sent adrenaline surging, a mix of terror and triumph. I was at Mia's cozy Bucktown apartment by then, curled on her couch with tea, shaking as the reality hit. This was irreversible. When we went to the condo that afternoon with a sheriff's deputy for protection, Alex was there, looking like hell, unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes wild with a mix of anger and fear I'd never seen. "Lauren," he started the moment the door opened, voice cracking, but I held up a hand, surprisingly steady. "Don't. Just don't." He tried anyway, pleading, denying, then shifting to blame. "If you'd been more supportive, more understanding of my stress." And that's when I played a clip of the dinner recording on my phone, his own voice in Korean spilling the ugly truths. The color drained from his face. He staggered back like I'd slapped him. You speak Korean? Fluently? How?" 2 years of self-study while you were too busy with Sophia and hiding money," I said coldly, the words tasting like victory. "I heard everything, Alex, every dismissal, every plan to leave me broke. You don't get to rewrite this." He crumbled then, sinking to the floor literally, sobbing about mistakes and therapy and how he could change. Classic narcissist collapse when control slips. But Dr. Ruiz had prepared me. This was hoovering, not genuine remorse. "It's over," I told him, voice firm despite the ache in my chest for the man he'd pretended to be. Packing my clothes and personal items under his broken gaze was surreal, a psychological minefield, memories flashing of happier times, our wedding photos I left behind, the couch where we'd watched movies early in our relationship, but each box sealed felt like shedding skin. The divorce dragged 8 grueling months.
He fought it first, hiring an aggressive attorney who tried to paint me as vindictive and the recording as invasive, but the evidence was overwhelming. Judges don't look kindly on hidden assets and infidelity in Illinois when community property is at stake. His company launched a full investigation after Victoria's anonymous tip with documentation. Turns out diverting funds violated ethics clauses, and whispers of the affair with a subordinate added fuel. They offered him a quiet exit package to avoid lawsuit, effectively stalling his CFO dreams. Settlement came down hard in my favor. The condo sold with me getting 60% of proceeds since I'd traced my income contributions. Full disclosure and division of all hidden accounts. He'd amassed nearly $1 million I'd never seen. 2 years alimony while I transitioned careers, though the new job made that unnecessary, and he had to pay my legal fees. Emotionally, the process was a roller coaster. Court dates where he'd stare at me pleadingly, nights doubting if I was destroying us both. But therapy and support from Mia, plus a divorce group at a local community center, kept me grounded, teaching me about post-betrayal growth, how pain carves space for stronger boundaries. Moving into a sunny 2-bedroom in Lakeview with floor-to-ceiling windows was cathartic. I furnished it my way. No more minimalist gray tones he preferred, but warm colors, plants, bookshelves filled with Korean literature. Starting the job with Kim's firm was pure vindication, leading a team bridging U.S. and Korean markets, traveling to Seoul 3 times that first year, earning respect for my insights, salary enough to build a real security. Colleagues became friends, one in particular, Daniel from legal, who saw me fully, my intellect, my humor, my scars, and we dated slowly, healthily, for 2 years before amicably parting when careers pulled us apart, but it proved I could love again without shrinking. Now at 46, looking back from my corner office with a view of the Han River during a work trip, that dinner feels like a lifetime ago. The psychological scars linger faintly, trust comes slower, I overcheck finances in new relationships, but they've made me resilient, fiercely independent. Alex reached out once, 2 years post-divorce, a LinkedIn message apologizing vaguely and mentioning he'd married Sophia, who'd left him 6 months later when the money dried up, hoping we could be civil. I didn't respond. Some betrayals don't deserve closure. Korean remains my joy. I tutor immigrants now, read poetry by Kim Sewol, host K-drama watch parties. If you're reading this and feeling invisible in your relationship, dismissed or controlled, know that quiet strength builds in secret pursuits. Nurture your own growth, document discrepancies, find your Victoria and Dr. Ruiz equivalents. The suspense of living a lie is brutal, the emotions devastating, but emerging on the other side, whole, powerful, truly seen, is the greatest thrill of all. You deserve a life where you're not just tolerated, but celebrated. Fight for it. It's waiting. Years after the dust settled, when I was finally living a life that felt entirely my own, people still asked me how I did it. How I walked away from a decade-long marriage, a shared home, a version of myself I'd spent years molding to fit someone else's expectations, and came out not just surviving, but thriving. The truth is, the real story didn't end with the divorce decree or the first day in my new job, or even the moment I stepped off the plane in Seoul for my first solo business trip. The real aftermath stretched on for years, a quieter but no less intense battle of rebuilding identity, trust, and self-worth after betrayal had torn everything apart. In those first months post-separation, the emotional whiplash was brutal. One day I'd wake up in Mia's guest room or my new Lakeview apartment, feeling free, powerful, ready to conquer the world with my 6-figure salary and passport full of stamps, and the next I'd be curled on the bathroom floor, sobbing over a random trigger, a song we used to play on road trips, the scent of his cologne lingering on an old sweater I'd forgotten to throw out, or just the crushing silence of coming home to an empty place after years of shared routines. Therapy with Dr. Ruiz became twice weekly for a while. We dug deep into betrayal trauma, how infidelity combined with financial deception creates a unique kind of PTSD, hypervigilance in new relationships, constant second-guessing of motives, nightmares of being abandoned, broke, and alone. You're grieving not just the person, but the future you thought you had, she said. And that hit hard because I'd pictured kids growing old in that condo, maybe retiring to a lake house up in Wisconsin like we'd talked about early on, all illusions built on lies. Friends rallied. Mia organized divorce parties with wine and burning old photos. My new work colleagues invited me to galas and networking events where no one knew me as Alex Harper's wife, but as Lauren, the sharp, bilingual director who closed deals with Korean execs like it was nothing. Mr. Kim became a mentor of sorts. During trips to Seoul, he'd take me to traditional Hanok restaurants, introduce me to his family, and one night over soju, he admitted he'd suspected something off at that Alinea dinner, not just from Alex's words, but from my composure. "You sat so still," he said in Korean, "like a tiger waiting." I thought, this woman is stronger than he knows. That validation meant everything, proof that even in my lowest moment, some part of me had already been fighting back. Dating was its own minefield. I waited a full year before dipping a toe in, starting with apps where I was brutally honest in my profile, recently divorced, fluent in sarcasm and Korean, looking for someone who values independence. First dates were awkward. I'd overanalyze every text, flinch at red flags like love bombing or subtle control, but therapy taught me that was normal, protective. Then came Daniel, the in-house counsel at my firm, kind-eyed, funny, a marathon runner who loved K-indie music and never once dismissed my ambitions. We built slowly. Coffee, then dinners, months before intimacy, and for the first time, I experienced partnership where my successes were celebrated, not overshadowed. When he got promoted to a role in New York and I wasn't ready to leave Chicago, we ended it amicably, with tears and hugs, no drama, proof I'd learned to love without losing myself. Work became my anchor and my launchpad. Within 2 years, I was promoted to VP of Global Communications, leading a team of 12 across 3 continents, negotiating multi-million-dollar partnerships, speaking at conferences in Seoul and San Francisco about cross-cultural marketing in the fintech space. The irony never escaped me that the language Alex used to exclude me became my superpower, opening doors he'd never dreamed of. I bought my own condo in Lincoln Park, a pre-war beauty with hardwood floors and a balcony overlooking the park. Furnished it with art from Korean galleries and mid-century pieces I picked myself. No compromises. Finances healed too. The settlement money plus my salary let me build a robust investment portfolio, hire a financial advisor who was a woman and specialized in post-divorce planning, and finally feel secure, no longer dependent on a man's goodwill. I traveled solo, Kyoto in cherry blossom season, Jeju Island for hiking, Iceland for the northern lights, experiences that rewired my brain, proving I could be happy alone, that my joy didn't require a partner. Giving back became important. I started mentoring young women at my old agency, especially those in uneven marriages or feeling stuck, sharing parts of my story anonymously at first, then openly. One mentee, a 28-year-old named Jess, who'd learned Spanish in secret while her husband mocked her hobbies, texted me after leaving him, "Your story gave me courage." That full circle moment healed something deep. Alex's life, from what mutual contacts shared, I never looked him up, didn't fare as well. Sophia laughs when the money and status evaporated. His career plateaued at a mid-tier firm with half the pay, and last I heard he was remarried to someone younger who reportedly managed his social calendar tightly. He tried reaching out twice more, once on my work anniversary with a generic "congrats" LinkedIn message I ignored, once through a mutual friend asking if I'd meet for closure, but closure wasn't his to demand. I'd found mine in living well. Now, at 50, I'm in a relationship again with someone who matches my energy. Marcus, a documentary filmmaker I met at a film festival panel on Korean cinema. We split time between Chicago and LA, travel together to festivals, argue passionately about politics and art, and he proudly tells people his partner is the reason major Korean conglomerates trust American markets.
We have no plans to marry. I've learned labels aren't necessary for commitment, and talks of kids never came up. Instead, we mentor young filmmakers and sponsor scholarships for language studies. My Korean is better than ever. I host a small podcast interviewing expats and bilingual professionals about secret skills that change their lives. And yes, I told my story in episode 12, voice disguised at first, but then fully owned. Listeners wrote in droves, women learning languages their partners didn't know, men discovering hidden talents after heartbreak, people realizing diminishment in relationships is a red flag, not normal. The psychological growth has been the most profound. I no longer apologize for taking up space, for having ambitions, for needing time alone with a book or a drama. Betrayal taught me resilience, but reclaiming my life taught me joy. If you're still reading this years into my journey and you're in that quiet place of doubt, feeling unseen, dismissed, secretly building something your partner doesn't value, know this. That secret skill, that hidden passion, that impractical interest is your lifeline. Nurture it fiercely. Document the discrepancies, emotional or financial. Build your support network before you need it. The pain of leaving is finite. The regret of staying when you know the truth is endless. That dinner in 65 years ago was the worst night of my life and the making of me. I am no longer the woman who sat silently smiling while being erased. I am Lauren Harper, fluent, fierce, financially independent, fully alive. And if I can rise from that table and build this life, so can you. Take the step. Learn the language, literal or figurative. Gather your evidence, your allies, your courage. The other side isn't just survival, it's freedom. And freedom tastes better than any Michelin-starred meal ever could. As I sit here now in my Lincoln Park condo on a crisp December evening in 2025, the city lights twinkling across the park like a sea of possibilities, I realize the story still isn't fully over, because life, unlike a neatly wrapped narrative, keeps unfolding, layering new chapters onto the ones that came before. I'm 52 now, and people still message me after finding my podcast episode or stumbling across the anonymous Reddit thread I posted years ago, the one that went viral with over 200,000 upvotes under the title, "I secretly learned my husband's secret business language and it destroyed and saved my life." They want to know, what happened next? Did the happiness last? Did the scars ever really fade? Did I ever look back and wonder if I overreacted? The answer is complicated, raw, and deeply human. So here it is, the part no one usually hears about the long, quiet years after the dramatic revenge arc. The first few years after the divorce felt like pure triumph, electric and validating. I was the woman who turned betrayal into a six-figure career leap, who traveled business class to Seoul and closed deals that made men twice my age listen when I spoke. I had the wardrobe, the friends, the balcony garden overflowing with herbs, the podcasts with thousands of downloads, the healthy relationship with Marcus that never demanded I dim my light. But around year 5 post-divorce, something shifted, a quiet hollowing out that caught me off guard. Success had filled the external voids, but internally there were still echoes. I'd be in a boardroom nailing a presentation in flawless Korean, and suddenly a wave of exhaustion would hit, not physical, but existential. Who am I when I'm not proving I'm better than the version of me he discarded? Therapy resurfaced, this time with a new therapist specializing in high-achieving women post-trauma. We named it Survivor's Plateau. I'd fought so hard to escape being small that I'd built a life around being big, visible, accomplished, but I hadn't yet learned how to just be. The psychological residue of those years with Alex lingered in subtle ways. I overworked to prove worth, hesitated to lean on Marcus during low moments because vulnerability once got weaponized, and sometimes in quiet nights alone, I'd feel a stab of irrational fear that everything could still be taken away if I let my guard down. Healing, I learned, isn't linear. It's a spiral. You revisit the same wounds at deeper levels as life demands more of you.
Marcus and I lasted 4 beautiful years. We traveled to Jeju together, spent Chuseok with his family in Busan, co-hosted dinner parties where guests raved about our chemistry. He was the first man who truly saw all of me, the ambitious executive, the wounded survivor, the woman who sometimes woke up gasping from nightmares of financial ruin. But in 2023, cracks appeared, not from betrayal, but from the simple mismatch of lives moving in different directions. His documentary career exploded. He was offered a multi-year project filming climate stories across Asia, based primarily in Singapore. My role at the firm had evolved into something I loved too much to leave. I was now Chief Communications Officer, mentoring a mostly female team, shaping company culture around work-life balance, the irony not lost on me. We tried long distance for 8 months, FaceTime dates, planned visits, but the resentment built slowly. Missed birthdays, exhausted conversations, the growing realization that neither of us wanted to sacrifice our hard-won careers again for love. We ended it over a weekend in Tokyo, walking through Yanaka in the rain, crying in a tiny cafe, promising to stay friends. It was the healthiest breakup imaginable, yet it gutted me. For months, I questioned everything. Was I too independent now? Too guarded? Had Alex's betrayal permanently damaged my ability to fully merge lives with someone else?
No, I'd simply raised my standards so high that half measures no longer felt like love. And that was growth. Professionally, the ride kept climbing. In 2024, my company was acquired by a larger Korean conglomerate, and I negotiated a seat on the global executive team, one of only 3 women and the only American. The money was life-changing. Bonuses that let me pay cash for a second home in Saugatuck, Michigan, right on Lake Michigan, a place I escaped to for writing and reflection. I expanded the podcast into a small media brand, Hidden Fluencies, interviewing people who'd secretly learned skills that transformed their lives. A stay-at-home dad who learned coding and launched an app. A woman who studied finance in secret and left an abusive marriage with a plan. An immigrant who mastered English through rap lyrics and became a spoken-word poet. Listeners sent voice notes crying, saying my story gave them permission to start their own secret journeys. I launched a scholarship fund for women learning second languages later in life, fully funded by my bonus one year. Mr. Kim, now retired but still a dear friend, flew to Chicago for the launch event and toasted me with tears in his eyes. "You turned pain into purpose. I always knew you were extraordinary." That night, I realized the dinner that broke me had also connected me to people who saw my worth when I couldn't. Personally, the biggest surprise came in 2025. Motherhood, unplanned and late, but wanted. At 49, I'd assumed that chapter was closed. Marcus and I had discussed adoption, but never pulled the trigger. Then, last year, a college friend going through IVF asked if I'd consider being an egg donor. Her husband was infertile, and she wanted a biological connection. I said yes almost immediately, moved by her story and by my own desire to give life in some way after years focused on reclaiming mine. The process was intense: hormones, retrievals, emotions. But when she gave birth to twin girls this past spring, holding them in the hospital room wrecked me in the best way. I'm Auntie Lauren, officially, but the bond is deeper. I have a room ready in both homes, spoil them with Korean children's books and onesies that say future polyglot. It's not traditional motherhood, but it's mine, and it filled a space I didn't know was empty. Watching those little girls grow, knowing part of me helped create them, has been its own healing. Alex crossed my path once more, unexpectedly, at a fintech conference in Chicago last year. I was keynoting, he was in the audience, older, grayer, representing a smaller firm. Our eyes met during the networking break. He approached hesitantly. "Lauren," he said, voice shaky, "you look incredible. Congratulations on everything." I waited, calm. He apologized, not the performative kind from years ago, but quieter, eyes downcast. I was a selfish bastard. I see that now. Therapy, losing everything, it forced me to look in the mirror. I'm sorry for how I treated you.
Part of me wanted to eviscerate him, list every wound, but I felt nothing sharp, just pity and distance. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I wish you well." And I walked away. Closure, finally, not because he gave it, but because I no longer needed it. Today, as 2025 draws to a close, I'm single again, but not lonely. I date occasionally, interesting men who match my energy, but I'm in no rush. My life is full. Mornings journaling on the balcony, weekends in Saugatuck writing the book I've outlined, this story, expanded, evenings tutoring Korean to first-gen college students over Zoom. The scars are there. Trust is earned slowly. I check contracts twice. I never let anyone manage my money. But they're like stretch marks from growth, proof of expansion rather than damage. If you're still here, still reading after all these years of my life laid bare, maybe you're in the thick of your own secret struggle. Maybe you're learning that language, taking that class, saving those screenshots, having those quiet cry sessions at 2 a.m., wondering if you're crazy for wanting more. You're not crazy. You're awakening. The road is long. There will be plateaus, setbacks, moments you question everything, but every step away from diminishment is a step toward yourself. I'm living proof. The woman who once sat frozen at a fancy dinner, smiling while her world shattered, is now the woman who builds worlds for others. You can too. Keep going. The life waiting on the other side isn't just better, it's yours, truly, fully, unapologetically yours. And that, my friend, is the real happy ending. As 2026 dawned with Chicago buried under its first real snowfall of the season, I found myself at another crossroads, one I never saw coming even after all the plot twists life had already thrown my way. I was 53 now, at the peak of my career, financially secure, emotionally steady, Auntie Lauren to two rambunctious twin girls who called me emo in adorable half-Korean accents, and yet something was stirring again. Not a crisis this time, not betrayal or collapse, but a gentle, insistent pull towards something bigger than even the empire I'd built at work. The book I'd been outlining for years, the full memoir of that fateful dinner, the secret language, the divorce, the rise, was finally under contract. A major publisher had approached me after my podcast hit 1 million downloads, and in January, I signed the deal. A 6-figure advance, a tight deadline, and the terrifying promise that this time my name would be on the cover. No anonymity. Writing it forced me to relive every moment in granular detail, the suffocating silence at Alinea, the adrenaline of photographing hidden bank statements, the hollow victory of watching Alex crumble, the slow, non-linear climb out of trauma, and in doing so, it unearthed emotions I thought I'd fully processed. Some nights I'd write until 3 a.m., tears streaming as I typed scenes I'd only ever told therapists or Mia, and other nights I'd close the laptop in panic, wondering if exposing it all would reopen wounds or invite judgment. But reader letters kept coming, hundreds every month now, women and men writing, "Your story is the reason I finally left. I started learning Mandarin because of you. I confronted my husband last night with the evidence I'd been gathering for a year." Their courage fueled mine. The book became not just my story, but theirs, a testament to every person who ever felt invisible and decided to become undeniable. Professionally, everything was golden on the surface. The acquisition had made me one of the highest-paid executives in the company's history, and I was courted for board seats, 2 nonprofit language access organizations, and 1 fintech startup founded by a former mentee. I said yes to all 3. But the higher I climbed, the more I noticed the toll. Endless travel, 80-hour weeks during deal seasons, the subtle ageism that crept in during meetings with younger soul colleagues who sometimes deferred to male counterparts first. Therapy helped me name it. Imposter syndrome's evil twin, survivor's overcompensation. I'd spent so long proving I wasn't the naive little wife Alex painted that I'd tied my worth to constant achievement. In spring 2026, I made a radical decision. I stepped down as CCO. Not retired, God no, but transitioned to a senior advisor role, 3 days a week, full pay retention for 2 years, and the freedom to pursue what was calling louder every day. Impact beyond the corporate ladder. The board was stunned. Mr. Kim, now in his late 70s and fully retired, called from Jeju to tell me he was proud. You learned the ultimate lesson. Success is choosing your own definition. The relief was immediate. I slept 8 hours for the first night in years. With time reclaimed, the next chapter unfolded in ways that felt almost destined. The twins' moms, my friends Rachel and Sujin, asked if I'd consider being their legal co-guardian in case anything ever happened to them. It was a profound honor, and saying yes shifted something tectonic inside me. Suddenly, I was helping with preschool applications, attending family day events, reading bedtime stories over FaceTime when they traveled. The girls started calling me Mama Lauren unprompted, and I let it land without correction. It wasn't the motherhood I'd once imagined with Alex, but it was real, messy, and mine. Marcus and I reconnected too. Not romantically first, just coffee when he was in Chicago for a film premiere. The chemistry was still there, quieter now, seasoned. By summer, we were dating again. Slowly, no labels, just two people who'd grown individually and found the timing finally aligned.
He moved back to Chicago part-time. We bought a small farmhouse together near Saugatuck as a shared retreat. For the first time, partnership felt effortless. No scorekeeping, no diminishment, just mutual celebration. The book, titled The Language He Thought I Couldn't Understand, released in October 2026. Launch day was surreal. A packed house at Women and Children First bookstore in Andersonville, Mia crying in the front row, Rachel and Sujin holding the twins on their laps as I read the dedication. To every person who ever learned in secret, gathered evidence in silence, and chose themselves anyway. It hit the New York Times bestseller list within weeks. Media tours followed. Good Morning America, NPR's Fresh Air, a viral TikTok series where I taught basic Korean phrases to survivors. Strangers stopped me in airports. You're the reason I left my emotionally abusive husband. I just served papers. Thank you. The responsibility felt enormous, but so did the privilege. I hired a full-time community manager to handle the flood of messages and partnered with domestic abuse organizations to create emergency funds for women in the evidence-gathering phase, because I remembered how terrifying those months were without financial runway. Alex made headlines one last time, indirectly. In late 2026, a business journal ran a profile on executives who'd survived career setbacks. He was quoted reflecting on poor judgment in personal matters that cost him a promising trajectory, now happily remarried and coaching youth soccer. Part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. He'd become the cautionary tale, while I became the inspiration. But mostly I felt neutral. He no longer occupied space in my psyche. That was true freedom. Now, as 2027 approaches, I'm preparing for what might be the biggest adventure yet, a year-long sabbatical. Marcus and I are planning to travel slowly, 3 months in Seoul, where I'll teach a university seminar on cross-cultural communication, 3 months in Paris because I've secretly started learning French, old habits die hard, and the rest divided between the farmhouse and visiting the twins wherever their moms take them. I'll write the follow-up book readers keep asking for, a practical guide, how to learn a language in secret, how to document financial discrepancies safely, how to find your version of Emma, Mia, or Victoria, how to rebuild after betrayal without tying your worth to revenge. The scars are faint now, like silver threads rather than open wounds. I still check contracts twice, still flinch slightly at sudden male anger, still tear up at certain love songs, but those reflexes no longer run the show. Joy does. If you've followed this far, through the dinner, the deception, the divorce, the rise, the plateaus, the unexpected motherhood, the book, the homecoming with myself, thank you. This isn't a fairy tale with a bow. It's a real life, still in progress. And if you're somewhere in the middle of your own version, maybe sitting quietly at a table while someone underestimates you, maybe studying late at night with earbuds in, maybe screenshotting bank statements with shaking hands, know this: every small act of reclamation is building the foundation of a life they can't imagine, because they never saw the real you, but you're seeing her now. Nurture her, protect her, trust her. One day you'll wake up in a home that's entirely yours, surrounded by people who celebrate you, doing work that lights you up, and you'll realize the pain was the price of admission to a freedom deeper than you ever dreamed possible. I'm living proof, and wherever you are on the timeline, day 1 or year 10, keep going. The woman you're becoming is worth every step. She's extraordinary, and she's already here. As 2027 bloomed into spring, with the cherry blossoms exploding along the Lake Michigan shoreline in a way that always reminded me of my first solo trip to Seoul, I found myself on a plane to Paris, not for vacation this time, but for the start of that year-long sabbatical Marcus and I had planned. I was 54 now, the book a solid bestseller with translations in 7 languages, including Korean and Japanese, the follow-up guide already half-written in stolen moments on trains and cafes. And yet boarding that flight felt like the deepest exhale of my life. No corporate emails pinging, no board meetings looming, just a one-way ticket, for now, and the quiet knowledge that I'd finally earned the right to pause without proving anything to anyone. Marcus joined 2 weeks later after wrapping a short film project. We rented a tiny apartment in Le Marais with creaky wooden floors and a view of rooftops that made every sunrise feel like a painting. I enrolled in an intensive French course at Alliance Française, not secretly this time, but openly, joyfully, laughing at my own mistakes in class alongside retirees and young expats who had no idea about my past until one day a student recognized me from the French edition of the book and whispered, "You're the woman who learned the language to save herself." We became friends. She was escaping a controlling family in Lyon, secretly saving for her own apartment, and our coffee chats after class became mini therapy sessions where I passed forward every lesson I'd learned the hard way. The months in Paris were pure reclamation. Mornings writing at Café de Flore, afternoons wandering the Seine with Marcus hand in hand, evenings cooking simple meals while practicing French conjugations aloud and dissolving into laughter when I butchered them. My French progressed faster than expected. Turns out being fluent in Korean had rewired my brain for languages, and by summer I was dreaming in a mishmash of 3 tongues. The twins visited for 3 weeks with Rachel and Sujin. We turned the apartment into a chaotic wonderland of crayons and children's books in 3 languages, took them to the Eiffel Tower, where they shrieked with delight at the sparkles, and I felt the profound fullness of this unconventional family I'd helped create. Watching them chase pigeons in Luxembourg Gardens while Marcus filmed it on his phone, I realized this was the life I'd once mourned never having, the one Alex had delayed and then tried to destroy. And here it was, better, richer, entirely on my terms. Back in the States for the fall portion of the sabbatical, we settled into the Saugatuck farmhouse full-time. The quiet of rural Michigan in autumn, the golden maples, the crisp air, and the silence broken only by waves on the lake became the perfect backdrop for finishing the guidebook. Titled, "How to Learn the Language They Think You'll Never Understand, A Practical Guide to Reclaiming Your Life," it released in early 2028 with even stronger sales than the memoir. Practical sections on safe evidence gathering with lawyer-vetted templates, how to learn a language secretly using free apps and immersion techniques, building a support network without alerting your partner, financial independence checklists, therapy resources for betrayal trauma. It became required reading in some domestic abuse support groups and even got assigned in a women's studies course at Northwestern, my alma mater. Royalties funded an expansion of the scholarship program. We now support 50 women a year learning 2nd or 3rd languages, many of them in situations eerily similar to mine a decade earlier.
One recipient, a 39-year-old mother of 3 from Texas, learning Spanish while planning her escape from a financially controlling husband, sent me a video the day she moved into her own apartment, tears streaming as she thanked me for giving her the roadmap. I watched it alone on the farmhouse porch and cried harder than I had in years. Not from pain this time, but from the overwhelming duty of pain transformed into purpose. Marcus proposed in December 2027. Quietly, no grand gesture, just us walking the frozen beach at sunset, him slipping a simple band on my finger and saying, "I don't need marriage to love you forever, but if it feels right to you now, I'd be honored." It did feel right, not because I needed validation, but because this partnership had proven itself through distance and growth and mutual respect. We married in spring 2028, in the farmhouse backyard with 30 people. Mia as my maid of honor, finally sober celebrating 10 years herself. Rachel and Sujin with the twins as flower girls, scattering petals everywhere. Mr. Kim flying in from Jeju despite his age, to give a toast in Korean that had everyone in tears. I wore a simple ivory dress, no veil, and read my vows in English, Korean, and the little French I'd mastered. It was intimate, joyful, and entirely ours. No performance, no optics, just love. Professionally, I never returned full-time. The advisory role morphed into occasional consulting, high-level strategy for companies wanting authentic cross-cultural bridges, and I started teaching that seminar at Seoul National University every spring semester, flying over for intensive 2-week blocks while Marcus films nearby projects. The twins are school-aged now, fluent in Korean and English with adorable French phrases they pick up from my visits, and they spend summers with us in Michigan, learning to swim in the lake and roast marshmallows. I'm Mama Lauren officially on school forms now, and the depth of that bond heals something I didn't know was still fractured. Alex faded completely from relevance. Last anyone heard, he'd moved to Florida, coaching soccer full-time after leaving corporate life. I wish him no ill, I truly don't. He was the catalyst, not the villain of my final story. The real villain was the version of me that once accepted being small, and she's long gone. Now, at 56, as I write this final reflection from the farmhouse desk overlooking the lake turning gold with autumn again, I can say with complete honesty, the story never really ends. Life keeps layering, new joys, new challenges, new versions of strength earned. The dinner that shattered me happened over 15 years ago, and yet its ripples still touch lives daily through the women who write to say they started learning the language because of me. If you're one of them, if you're reading this years after it began, maybe in your own quiet moment of awakening, know that every secret study session, every screenshot saved, every tear shed in the dark is building something unbreakable. You are not the decorative wife, the naive partner, the little job placeholder. You are the woman who will one day look back from a life so full it overflows and realize the worst night was the doorway to the best ones. I'm still walking through new doors. So will you. Keep learning, keep gathering, keep choosing yourself. The life waiting isn't just worth it, it's magnificent, and it's already yours.